It's fascinating, isn't it? Why do really smart people, people running complex operations, managing huge sums of money, why do they keep making these, well, fundamental mistakes?
It really is a puzzle, and often it's not about raw brain power. It's more about the map they're using. If your mental models are off, or, if you can't even read the map clearly because something's interfering.
Then even the sharpest mind can end up lost.
Exactly.
And now with AI speeding everything up, work, thinking, communication, that clarity, the quality of those internal maps or mental models, it's just becoming exponentially more crucial.
Yeah, the demand for clear human judgment isn't just nice to have anymore, feels like.
Yeah.
Well, it's the essential edge.
So this week we're diving deep into maybe the biggest threat to that judgment. We're talking about the escalating war for our attention.
It's a massive issue. You know Jeff Sands, the corporate turnaround guy,
Right.
executed multiple companies, got the awards. He has this simple, almost brutal rule when he steps into a failing business. Biggest flames first.
Right. Focus on what's most critical.
And right now, arguably, the biggest flame burning in your professional life isn't strategy or resources. It's the systematic erosion of our ability to pay attention.
And it's so important to grasp that this isn't just about, being lazy or lacking willpower. It feels structural, engineered almost.
It absolutely is. Johann Hari nailed this shift in his book, Stolen Focus. There's a quote in there that it perfectly sets the stage for what we need to discuss.
Okay, let's hear it.
Hari wrote, "For a long time, we took our attention for granted, as if it was a cactus that would grow even in the most desiccated climate. Now we know it's more like an orchid, a plant that requires great care or it will wither."
An orchid, not a cactus. That's a powerful image.
It gets starker, he continues. I started to wonder what happens to a world where this form of deep focus shrinks so far and so fast. What happens when that deepest layer of thinking becomes available to fewer and fewer people until it is a small minority interest, like opera?
Wow. Deep thinking becoming like opera. A niche interest. For anyone in business or investing, that's
Yeah.
a terrifying thought.
Right. What happens to long-term strategy, to synthesis, to solving really complex problems if we collectively lose the ability to just sit with something difficult for, say, 3 uninterrupted hours?
That is the question we need to tackle. Welcome, everyone, to Poor Ash's Almanac from Askeladden Capital. This is where we explore the ideas that help build better judgment in life, business, and investing.
Our goal today is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Analyze this attention crisis, understand why it's structural, and figure out how we can leverage human judgment, maybe amplified by AI, but definitely not controlled by it, to fight back.
Okay, before we jump into the weeds, maybe let's define our terms quickly. When we say attention,
Right. We mean the selective allocation of your limited cognitive resources, basically choosing what gets in.
and focus is just.
Sustained attention, keeping that attention fixed on a specific goal you've chosen.
Got it. I heard a great analogy for this recently. Think of your prefrontal cortex like a bouncer at a nightclub in your mind.
Okay, I like that.
Its job is to decide who gets in, who stays out. But the problem now is that bouncer is just overwhelmed. There's this huge, algorithmically driven crowd trying to crash the party all the time.
That's the stolen focus Harry talks about. Constant interruption, constant harvesting.
And it's only getting worse, right? With AI making content creation basically free.
The noise level is just exploding, which takes us straight into the data. This isn't just about feeling scattered. It's a measurable structural crisis. It's physics, almost.
Okay, let's break that down.
So the first thing to really internalize it, and it's kind of liberating actually, is that this crisis is systemic. If you're struggling to focus, it's likely not just a personal failure.
It's the environment.
Exactly. The systems we use are often designed to capture and exploit our attention. We're swimming upstream against a really strong current.
Which means just trying harder, relying on willpower.
It's structurally naive. The sources we looked at are clear on this. Design beats discipline. You have to change the system, not just grit your teeth harder.
And the scale of the problem, the sheer overload, makes that obvious. I saw this data from Soon Lehman. It's incredible. Back in '86, the average daily information load was like reading 40 newspapers.
40.
By 2007, it was 174 newspapers.
174. And that data's, what, over 15 years old now?
Easily. We're probably past 200 by now.
Hari quotes Lehman directly on this. He says the most reliable way to degrade attention, individual or collective, is simple. Just flood the system with information.
Our brains evolved for scarcity, right? Not
Yeah.
this this fire hose.
They just collapse under the abundance. And you see this speeding up effect everywhere, analyzing historical data, Google Books back to the 1800s, modern Twitter trends.
Topics come and go faster.
Way faster. Decade by decade, cultural attention spans are shrinking. The whole system demands quicker, shallower engagement.
And we feel this individually, too. The numbers are stark. Harvard reports the average American spends, 5.4 hours a day on their phone.
5.4 hours. Contrast that with just 17 minutes reading books.
17 minutes. That's sobering.
And here's the kicker. The average person touches their phone 2,617 times every single day.
2,600. Wow. I might hit that before lunch some days. That just perfectly shows the activation energy model, doesn't it?
Totally. The phone requires zero effort.
Yeah.
It's designed to be the easiest thing to do.
But that constant, easy engagement has this huge hidden cost, the context switching.
Ah, yes, the context switching cost.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that, because the whole multitasking idea is largely a myth.
Right. People think they're like a computer GPU running lots of things at once.
Parallel processing. But neuroscientists like Earl Miller at MIT, they're very clear. The conscious brain has a serious bottleneck. It can maybe hold one or two thoughts actively at a time, or sequential, like a CPU.
So what we call multitasking is really just
Rapid task switching, bouncing back and forth very quickly.
And that switching has a real cognitive penalty, the switching cost effect. It's not just the time lost in the switch itself.
No, it's more insidious. It's the errors you make, because your focus is split. It's the time spent backtracking, trying to remember where you were. It's the mental effort of just reorienting yourself each time. It adds up.
The data on this cost is genuinely shocking. I mean, it should make anyone running anything pause and think.
Yeah.
In controlled studies, just intermittent texts, they cut student performance by about 20%.
20% is significant.
But this next one, this is the one that really got me. Routine digital interruptions. Just, checking email quickly, switching between apps, it can drop your measured IQ by about 10 points in the moment.
Hold on. 10 IQ points. Let's put that in perspective. That impairment is twice what studies associate with smoking marijuana.
Twice.
And it's an IQ drop similar to the average gap between someone with a high school education and someone with, say, a postgraduate engineering degree.
Exactly. It shows that fragmenting your attention literally lowers your cognitive horsepower right then and there. It's not just a distraction. It makes you temporarily, less capable.
It's like intellectually emptying your entire desk into a drawer just to answer a quick email, then having to pull everything back out to get back to the main task. The setup and cleanup costs more than the interruption itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this switching cost gets worse because of how we tend to read now, especially on screens.
You're talking about Professor Anne Mangan's research?
Yeah. Her work shows reading on screens trains us differently. It encourages scanning and skimming, that manic slip and jump style, looking for keywords, clicking the next link.
Whereas reading a physical book or a long document trains linear thinking, deep comprehension, following an argument from start to finish.
And the danger is that screen habit, the jumping around, it bleeds over. You find yourself skimming a physical report or even a novel when you actually need to absorb it deeply.
This leads right into the idea of screen inferiority. There's a lot of research now, like over 50 studies pulled together, confirming people generally understand and remember less complex information from screens compared to paper.
And for kids, this is particularly worrying. The comprehension gap they found is like losing 2/3 of a year's educational growth.
That's staggering, especially during those peak neuroplasticity years when you're building foundational mental models.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, okay, we need some nuance here, right? As professionals, investors, we can't just ditch screens entirely.
Absolutely not. Using Shrel plus F to find a specific clause in a contract, querying huge databases, using AI tools like Perplexity to check facts quickly. These are essential now.
Right. So the answer isn't throwing out the tech. It's about being intentional.
It's about applying the right tool to the right task. Use the screen for searching and scanning when that's appropriate. Use paper or focused digital reading for deep synthesis. It's about choosing your modality based on the goal. CPU work versus GPU work, essentially.
That's a perfect setup for where we need to go next. If we can't reject the tech, we need to understand it better. How does AI itself pay attention? Knowing that helps clarify our unique human role.
Okay, so the big bang for modern AI, especially large language models, was that 2017 paper. You know, the one. Attention is all you need.
Right. The paper that introduced the transformer architecture. That's the foundation for basically all the major generative AI models today.
And the core innovation to Transformer was this concept called self-attention. Before that, models like RNNs had to read text word by word sequentially.
Which meant they could easily forget the beginning of a long sentence by the time they reached the end. Made understanding long-range context really hard.
Exactly. Self-attention broke that limitation. It lets the model look at all the words or tokens in a chunk of text simultaneously, in parallel.
Hmm.
It learns to assign weights, figuring out how important each word is to every other word.
So it can connect it back to the company. You mentioned paragraphs earlier.
Precisely. That's crucial for things like good translation, summarizing long documents, really understanding the nuances.
And this parallel processing brings us back to that hardware comparison we touched on. LLMs run on GPUs, thousands of cores, doing math in parallel. Massive parallelism, very fast, but you could say extensive and maybe shallow computation.
Yeah, that's a fair characterization. They process huge amounts of data very quickly. Our brains, though, are more like that CPU. Sequential, much better at deep, single-threaded reasoning, context, synthesis, judgment.
They're just different architectures for different kinds of tasks, both powerful but fundamentally different.
And understanding that difference is key to seeing the limits of AI. This is something we emphasize constantly at Ask Aladdin Capital. LLMs are incredibly sophisticated pattern engines.
They predict the next word based on statistics, on patterns learned from vast amounts of text.
Right, but they don't understand causality. They don't have a concept of truth or lived experience. They can mimic a logical argument, a chain of thought, but they aren't actually thinking it through in the human sense.
And because they're statistical, they have these predictable blind spots that can be, frankly, dangerous if you're relying on them for critical decisions, like investing.
Oh, definitely. They famously struggle with simple negation understanding, not X. Sarcasm, intent. Those often fly right over their heads.
And the big one, hallucination.
Hmm.
When the data is thin or the prompt is unusual, they can just generate plausible-sounding nonsense with complete confidence.
That confidence is the real danger. The output looks authoritative, but it might be completely untethered from reality. It's an advanced statistician, not an oracle.
Which circles us back to why human judgment is irreplaceable. Our CPU-like ability to reason, to question, to understand why, that's the safeguard. That's what keeps the technology aligned with truth and purpose.
If we let our own capacity for that deep reasoning degrade because our focus is constantly stolen, well, we lose the very thing that makes us essential partners to the technology, not just users of it.
Beyond that sequential reasoning, there's another human superpower that AI just can't replicate yet. Lateral thinking, making those unexpected connections.
And interestingly, that often happens when we're not actively focused on the problem, when our minds are wandering.
Which brings us to the default mode network, or DMN. That's the brain's activity during downtime in the shower, on a walk, staring out the window, what looks like idleness.
But it's not idle at all. Harry points out the DMN is highly active and correlates strongly with memory consolidation, imagination, empathy, finding meaning. It's where the brain integrates and synthesizes information in the background.
It's the source of those aha moments, those slow hunches.
Exactly. And here's the real tragedy of the attention crisis, according to Hari and others. The DMN gets systematically shut down by constant connectivity.
Because every time there's a micro gap, a moment of potential quiet,
We reach for the phone. We fill it with external novelty, infinite scrolling, quick hits of information. The brain never gets a chance to switch into that crucial reflective synthesizing mode.
we end up in what Hari calls that unsatisfying whir. Not truly focused, but not truly resting or mind-wandering either. Just stuck in this low-grade, anxious state of readiness for the next ping.
It's incredibly inefficient, cognitively speaking.
We actually saw a perfect example of this pattern engine limitation versus human lateral thinking recently at Poor Ash's Almanac. We wanted to put a podcast player on a web page. Simple enough, right?
You'd think so.
We asked an AI assistant for help, specifically asking for a podcast widget. The AI got stuck on the word widget. It showed real commitment bias, kept suggesting complex solutions, third-party services requiring sign-ins, paid subscriptions.
Because widget statistically correlates with those things in its training data.
Exactly. But a human on the team immediately saw the real goal wasn't the widget itself. The goal was just let visitors listen easily without logging in.
So the lateral solution.
Obvious in retrospect, just embed the YouTube video of the podcast. Achieve the actual goal instantly, far simpler. The AI couldn't make that lateral leap because it was locked into the pattern matching of the prompt word.
That perfectly illustrates Stephen Johnson's idea of slow hunches from how we got to now. Big ideas rarely arrive fully formed. They bubble up slowly, often connecting unrelated concepts in the background, simmering in the DMN.
Like Willis Carrier, hired to solve a humidity problem for a printer.
And realized his dehumidifier also chilled the air significantly. Connected humidity control to cooling, boom, air conditioning.
Or Clarence Birdseye seeing Inuit flash freeze fish in the Arctic air.
And connecting that observation to why commercially frozen food back then was so mushy and bad, it was frozen too slowly. That connection birthed the modern frozen food industry.
These leaps require time, patience, cross-contextual thinking. Things our human CPUs excel at, especially when the DMN is allowed to function. Things the parallel pattern engines just aren't built for.
So if willpower alone can't fix this, and the problem is deeply structural, the solutions also have to be structural.
Right. We have to start by acknowledging our own limits. Willpower, as valuable as it is finite. It gets depleted.
Even Roy Baumeister, who's like the expert on willpower research, admitted he struggles. He said when he's stressed, his mind jumps around more, he plays phone games, he just sort of gives in to it.
If the leading expert admits defeat sometimes, what chance do the rest of us have just relying on grit?
Exactly. Trying to out-discipline systems designed by armies of engineers at multi-billion-dollar companies to capture your attention, it's just not a winning strategy long-term.
So we need to flip the script. Use the same principles of design and activation energy that are used against us, but use them for us.
Fight fire with fire. We need to embrace technology, specifically AI, not just as a tool for tasks, but as a shield for our focus.
Turn the AI into an infinite intern.
That's a great way to put it. An intern dedicated to managing the noise, handling the shallow stuff, so our primary cognitive resources, our CPU time, are freed up.
So using AI to accelerate the tedious work. Summarizing long emails, structuring documents, extracting data points.
All the things that cause constant context switching and drain that limited attention pool. AI can batch process that kind of work, handle the interruptions, and deliver a synthesized result, dramatically reducing the switching cost for us.
It reminds me of Don Norman's point in The Design of Everyday Things. He argued that obsessing over memorization and doing everything manually is kind of immature.
Right. Technology, starting with writing itself, then books, now AI, is meant to free our minds from the petty tyranny of tending to the trivial. We should offload the road stuff.
Okay, so how do we apply this structurally? Using AI not just for tasks, but for redesigning our workflows.
Well, Harry mentions Azar Raskin, the guy who, somewhat regretfully, invented infinite scroll. Raskin himself talks about structural fixes using choice architecture, basically designing the environment to nudge us towards better behavior.
Instead of the constant drip of behavioral cocaine from notifications.
Platforms could be designed, or even regulated, to batch them. Imagine getting all your non-urgent social media or email notifications just once or twice a day, like a digital newspaper delivery.
Raskin also suggested getting rid of infinite scroll, forcing a conscious click to continue, breaking the passive consumption loop.
And the really cool part is, you don't have to wait for platforms to change. Professionals can build simple versions of this now using basic automation tools, maybe even simple AI agents.
Like setting up a system to screen emails, filter Slack messages, and give you a digest at, say, 11 a.m. and 4 p.m.
Exactly. You use the same tech that creates the distraction to build a shield against it. You protect your flow state, ensuring your best thinking time isn't constantly fragmented by low-value interruptions.
This leads directly to Cal Newport's concept of deep work. The goal is to maximize that high-value, focused state.
Newport draws a sharp contrast. Deep work is valuable, rare, meaningful. Shallow work is cheap, abundant, easy, and loud.
And his point is, if you don't actively schedule and defend the deep work,
The shallow work will always win. It expands to fill the available time. It's like the urgent but not important stuff in Covey's matrix just taking over your entire calendar by default.
So Newport suggests different scheduling strategies. Monastic, bimodal.
Right. Monastic is like total isolation for deep work. Bimodal is alternating dedicated deep work periods, weeks, months, with periods open to shallow work. Rhythmic is scheduling the same deep work block every day. Journalistic is grabbing deep work opportunities whenever they arise.
The specific method doesn't matter as much as the principle, making deep work the default, the protected time, rather than the leftover time.
And structure is key. Newport also talks about attention residue. Every time you quickly check your inbox, even for a second, some part of your brain stays stuck on that email when you try to return to your main task. the switching isn't clean.
So batching the shallow work into specific limited windows isn't just about efficiency, it's about reducing that cognitive residue. The AI digest approach helps minimize the number of switches.
Another counterintuitive point Newport makes is the need to cultivate boredom.
Tolerate boredom, that sounds painful.
Huh? Maybe. But his argument is, if you fill every tiny gap waiting for coffee, riding the elevator with novelty from your phone, your brain never learns to tolerate the mild discomfort of just being, of quiet.
And that quiet is where the mind wandering, the DMN, kicks in.
Exactly. If you train yourself to need constant external stimulation, you lose the ability to access that internal state necessary for deep thinking and creativity.
The results when organizations protect focus can be pretty dramatic, right? Like that New Zealand trial.
Perpetual Guardian, yeah. They tested a 4-day work week for 5 days' pay. The results were stunning. Employees got as much or more done in 4 days.
And their well-being.
Improved significantly.
Yep.
Social media use dropped 35%. Reported stress went down 15%. It shows that focused work isn't linear. You can get nonlinear value creation.
Yeah.
It's the 80-20 principle applied to your brain power.
That ability to generate 80% of the value in 20% of the time because you're focused, that's a huge competitive advantage for any individual or team.
Absolutely. It's something we look for when assessing management teams. Do they allow constant interruption, or have they built structures to protect deep work?
So we've covered structural solutions and tech shields, but we should briefly touch on the foundation, right? If the basics aren't there, none of this works. I'm thinking sleep and stress.
Critically important. Dr. Matthew Walker's work in Why We Sleep is essential here. Sleep deprivation is just devastating for focus. It prevents the brain's cleaning process, the lymphatic system clearing out metabolic waste.
That waste builds up, impairs thinking.
Right. And maybe even more relevant for decision makers, lack of sleep messes with emotional regulation. It weakens the connection between the rational prefrontal cortex and the emotional amygdala. You end up making poor judgments, reacting more emotionally.
And stress, chronic stress.
Howery talks about how prolonged stress locks the brain into hypervigilance. You're constantly scanning for threats. That mode simply crowds out long-term thinking, learning, creativity.
Rob Henderson's memoir, Troubled, painted such a vivid picture of that. Growing up in constant fight or flight, deep, contemplative thought just wasn't possible. Survival mode overrides everything else.
So managing stress and prioritizing sleep are non-negotiable prerequisites for reclaiming focus.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. If we connect this attention issue to the nature versus nurture model, the implications for kids are really quite scary.
They really are. We're talking about brains during peak neuroplasticity when these attention pathways are being formed. The idea of brain rot from certain types of content isn't just hyperbole anymore. There's real science emerging.
Especially the hyper-stimulating super short-form stuff, like some TikToks, some Reels.
Yeah, content engineered for maximum dopamine hits with minimum duration. Consuming too much of that seems to literally train the brain away from sustained, internally directed focus. It fails to build that tolerance for effortful attention.
And we're seeing this huge spike in ADHD diagnoses, especially in boys.
Right. And while ADHD is a real neurological condition for many, the sources suggest some cases might be, well, a mismatch. Kids who are naturally bright, energetic, maybe bored by conventional schooling, reacting to an environment that doesn't challenge or engage them deeply enough.
It's like their biology is crying out for more stimulation or complexity than the environment provides.
Exactly. My own mother actually stumbled onto this intuitively when I was a kid, struggling to focus on vocabulary lists.
Yeah.
Instead of just demanding silence, she let me build complex Lego models while I practiced the words. The physical manipulation, the cognitive challenge of the Legos, it actually anchored my attention, paradoxically allowing the verbal stuff to sink in.
That's fascinating. So the environment needs to adapt to the brain's needs, not just the other way around. Biology isn't destiny, but we need the right conditions.
Which brings us to maybe the most crucial warning for high achievers using these new tools, especially AI, Jevons paradox, or the iron law of efficiency.
Okay, explain that one.
Basically, it states that when you make the use of a resource more efficient, you often end up consuming more of that resource, not less. Think more fuel-efficient cars, leading to people driving more miles.
The efficiency gain gets eaten up by increased usage.
Precisely. We saw this firsthand at Escaladen Capital when we started using more advanced AI for research. Initially, it felt like a superpower. A literature review that used to take 3 solid days of focused work suddenly done by lunchtime on day one.
Wow, so more time for rest, deeper thinking.
That was the logical expectation. But the reality, the exact opposite happened. The efficiency created more demand. We didn't just do the one report faster, we immediately chained the next project and the next.
So the save time just got filled instantly with more work.
Immediately repurposed. We found ourselves working just as late, maybe later, handling more volume, feeling this low-level pressure to always operate at the AI's pace. The efficiency gains were completely consumed by increased throughput, not by deeper quality or more rest.
That's a huge trap. Faster analysis doesn't automatically mean better decisions. It can just mean more decisions made faster, maybe rushed, maybe on lower value things.
We have to apply Jevons paradox to our own cognitive bandwidth.
So it comes back to selectivity, when the information flow is a fire hose.
The answer isn't to just get better at drinking faster. It's to be radically selective. Use human judgment, use structural design, use AI automation, not just for speed, but to reduce the flow. Turn the fire hose back into a manageable stream you can actually process, synthesize, and turn into real wisdom. #tag outro Tosh. So if there's one core takeaway from our deep dive today, maybe it's this. Your attention is your primary intellectual capital. Especially now, in this age of infinite information, you have to manage it just as carefully as you manage financial capital. Prioritize selection and depth over just speed.
That's a great summary. Okay, so here's a little experiment you can try. The next time you find yourself in that unsatisfying Hari described, waiting in line during a commercial, not really focused, but not resting either, just notice it, and consciously interrupt the automatic reach for the phone. Just stand there, think. Let the DMN maybe tick in for a second, see what happens.
And remember Jevons paradox as you embrace AI's efficiency. Faster isn't always better. So before you trust any output, whether it's yours or an algorithm's, pause, ask, which mental model shaped this? Did this tool just make me faster, or did it actually help me become wiser? Keep human reasoning firmly in the driver's seat.
Excellent points. You can find the full write-up on this topic and explore more guided learning journeys at Poor Ash's Almanac from Ask Aladdin Capital. Join us next time as we dive into another model designed to sharpen judgment and, importantly, to help keep human wisdom front and center in a world that's increasingly shaped by AI.